Great, so I've just changed the name of the conference here to give you a hint of what I'm going to talk about today. And I come to this from the point of view of a member. When I was writing this talk, I had no idea I'd be elected to the board. So I'm speaking as a normal member, if that makes sense. So when I was preparing this talk, to be honest, I was absolutely stumped as to what to talk about. So I turned to the place that all acupuncturists turn to for inspiration, namely the Tao and Yin and Yang. And I found myself pondering this and remembering a day in my first year of college when it suddenly dawned on me how the 5 elements and the Sheng and Ko cycles are absolutely innately manifest in every aspect of life. They manifest in our bodies, manifest in our psyches, and manifest in our interactions with each other. And what that means is they manifest in how organizations themselves work, how organizations work with each other, how organizations work with governments, and how governments work together on a global scale. There seems to be nothing in the world where you don't find the 5 elements manifest. I also discovered that looking at things through the lens of the 5 elements gives me a really good insight and a fresh perspective on how things work. And also helps me to kind of diagnose situations and organizations beyond just people. So on that note, I thought I'd have a look at the BXC from the point of view of the 5 elements. I put the BXC in the middle and have a look at it. So let's start with Earth, and it's late summer. And I saw that there are 2 quite strong earthy characteristics within the BXC. There's a real sense of building community. And we see that with the Bridging the Gap documentation and the way student acupuncturists are sort of held and nurtured as they come from college. There are these talks that the BXC does at the colleges, and then there's the Bridging the Gap pack that nurtures students. And Natalie does a fantastic job of that. And if you are a student, I'd encourage you to draw on some of that nurture and have a look at what's there. The regional support groups really stood out as a lovely earthy thing. It's where we all come together in community, support each other. And again, that's the way that the BXC seems to foster community within our profession. And then of course there's the online forum. The other aspect of the earth element that I really saw shine was the intellectual side of things, which I really enjoy. And there's the 3 CPD events, there's ACU, great publication that's both a community building thing and intellectual, and then there's eJob. And I love to give my brain a little workout on eJob from time to time. And then of course there's the ARRC and all the research that goes on in the symposium. So thumbs up for the earth element on the BXC. Moving round, we get to the metal element. If I gave the BXC a CF, if I wanted to diagnose a CF, I would say that the BXC is metal. I don't know how you feel, you may have very different opinions. But this is where I see a lot of strength. So there's a lot of focus on quality, the code of professional conduct, and there's the CPD requirement, and that requirement that the BXC is really quite strong on, that we continue to improve and develop and become better and better and better and better as acupuncturists. And then there's a mark of quality. There's that external recognition of the quality of the BXC as an organisation and the quality and professionalism of us as members, and the fact that we're part of the accredited voluntary recognition. And I felt that that was a really beautiful acknowledgement of our status. Internally, I see a lot of integrity. I've worked for a lot of big organisations before I retrained, and I've never seen an organisation with such meticulous internal governance. I didn't see that before I started to get more and more involved in the BXC, but as I've done a bit more and got a little bit more involved, I've seen more and more of that internal governance. And it is absolutely rigorous and meticulous, and that was beautiful to see. The ethics committee has always been quite strong, and the complaints and disciplinary procedures are again meticulous and done absolutely correctly and properly. Very good. Thumbs up for the metal. Onto water. The water aspect of the BXC is the reason I joined and the reason I remained a member in the early years. Now there are other reasons why I remain a member. There's strong focus on public safety, so our admissions criteria are very high. I'm on the, I assess admissions or admission applications from people who don't come through the BA&B colleges, and so particularly overseas members or applicants. And we do not let all of them in, believe you me. We make them jump through a million hoops. They have to come into the offices and demonstrate their needle technique, safe point location. They're interviewed, they submit 2 case studies, and we look into their qualifications quite rigorously. So we absolutely hold to making sure that all of the members provide safe treatment. There's the Code of Safe Practice, the Guide to Safe Practice, and the Adverse Incident Reporting Tool. So a lot of focus on public safety. What I find really helpful and reassuring is that it's our safety net as members. First of all, there's the insurance, right? There's the Safe Practice Self-Audit Tool that I do annually, and every single year I've had to pick myself up on something in my clinic to make sure I'm as safe as I can be. So that's a real tool that helps me to make sure that my practice is safe. There's the risk assessment form, and then there's legal advice. And for me, this has been amazingly useful. Last year, I had a patient who was very vulnerable. She had a lot of mental health difficulties, she had a lot of physical difficulties, and she had a 13-year-old daughter. She still has a 13-year-old daughter, who, through talking to the patient, I discovered was very vulnerable. She was looking after her mother, and she was at risk. And her mother, my patient, was very opposed to having anybody look into that situation. She was very afraid that her daughter would be taken from her. As you can imagine, I was terrified for her, for what do I do about confidentiality, and for her daughter. And Jane Dubois held my hand over several weeks and several phone calls as we worked through the situation, made sure that I stayed on the right side of the law and got the right help in for them both. And the outcome was very positive. But I was very grateful to have that safety net to catch me. I'll also be very grateful to have that safety net catch me if, God forbid, a needle breaks off in a patient, somebody exhibits symptoms of pneumothorax after a treatment, or somebody has an adverse reaction to gua sha. So that's something. Thumbs up for the water element. Then we come to wood. Again, before getting more and more involved in the BXC, I felt like they should be fighting for us more people. But since I got more involved, I've got to understand sort of the inside of the wood element within the BXC, and the depth of the understanding of the political landscape and the medical landscape in the UK. And there's some fantastic people. There's a guy called Robert Pettigrew on the Membership Services Committee, and he can tell you which MP drinks at which water, which fountain, in which place in Whitehall on what day. I mean, he is phenomenal. He can tell you, the name of Theresa May's dog. It's incredible. I don't actually know if she has a dog, but if she did, he would know. And of course, there's a lot of work going into the BXC strategy at the moment, and a lot of invitation to feed into that and be part of that. And then the self-assertion aspect of the wood element, and this is the bit that I often felt I want more of. We have a magical, fantastic medicine, and I want it promoted, and I don't want people who don't have the training to piggyback off what we do. There is a lot of work going on with lobbying Parliament. Fantastic videos being made looking at the evidence base for acupuncture, with some handouts. And there's a parliamentary event coming up where that's going to be shown to MPs. There's also, with Robert Pettigrew's help, we're looking at repositioning the way we lobby Parliament as well, which is very exciting. Then there's the issues that BXC has stood up for, so standing up to NICE on the back treatment for back pain guidelines, and challenging the blood donation restrictions. And we've not always won as members and as the BXC. It's not always won the battles we fought. But what I have seen is the BXC stand up again and again and fight again and again. Get knocked down, get up again. And that's what I like to see in the wood element, that relentless, keeping on going thing. As Nelson Mandela says, it always seems impossible until it's done. So you just stand up and you fight again. I'm going to come back to all of these elements Again, we'll have a look at wood in more detail. And finally, there's fire and sharing the love of our profession, the love of our medicine, and the love of our organisation. There's been a much stronger focus on PR lately, which I'm delighted to see, and I want to see more of. I think it's really important. World Acupuncture Day coming up. The BAC was a part of a tri-continental conference looking at World Acupuncture Day and what we can all do together. And that's the sort of extending of that love around the globe. You know, take the love, share it out. There's some great advertising advice on the website. If you haven't looked at it, it's a great way to help you share the love of your practice with the public at large, and the marketing materials as well. Great tool for sharing the love. Then there's feeling the love. And I'm feeling much more loved by the BXC in the last 6 months to a year. I think there's been a bit of a sea change in terms of feeling the love as a member. And with things like the Membership Services Committee and other committees that members are very much part of. I've got venerable members. This is about loving and appreciating our retiring members. It's also been dubbed the Elders Club. We don't have a name for it yet. Sarah Matheson is looking for a name for it, so if you have an idea or would like, or are a venerable member or an elder and would like a particular name, then talk to Sarah. There's the fellowships that the BXC does, so sharing the love for people who've been important to our profession. And then of course this conference, which is a glowing and wonderful expression of Kevin Durgeon's love for us. I think, you know, I want to share the love back to Kevin for the work that he puts into all of this for us. So that's great for the BXC, but as we know in acupuncture, no organ sits on its own out there, unconnected. We actually shape the BXC far more than the BXC shapes us. We influence it and create it. It is ours to create and to mould. It really is. And I think even more so in the last year to 6 months as well. It's something that connects us to each other and that we're all connected to. And that got me thinking about how, if each of us was an acupuncture point, what point would we be to give the British Acupuncture Council the treatment we think it needs? So if the areas of the BXC where you think it's a bit painful or that's not working as it should, how can we treat the BXC? How can we put that BXC on the couch as our patient and work as a point to give it a treatment? So I came up with a few points that I'd like to use and what they might be. So starting with Earth, I've chosen grandfather, grandson, spleen 4, one of the most beautifully named points. And I was quite pleased because it's also a point for an extraordinary meridian. And this is all about giving and receiving support. I'm going to talk about receiving support first of all, and that's actually taking advantage of the support that the BXC offers. So going to support groups, going to the free CPD events, downloading the materials, when you've got a question or you're worried, phoning the BXC. I mean, it has a financial support helpline, you know. So actually taking advantage of that support to nourish your own earth element. And then, of course, giving back to have that balance within the earth element. And ways to give back is simply to respond to requests. So requests for case studies, requests for people to go on to apply to be part of the committees, for example, and to offer supervision, to offer to open your clinic to students to come and observe. So all ways that you can give back and receive from the BXC. And it was doing this that eventually gave me the confidence to nominate myself or to run for the board. And I never would have done that without the confidence that built over time in that giving and the receiving with the BXC. Now for metal. I've chosen 2 points here because I think the BXC is a metal CF. I appreciate this isn't a classic CF treatment, they're not both command points or anything like that, but they were my 2 favorites for the BXC. So I've done both the yin and yang aspects. I've chosen large intestine 7, warm flow, because it detoxifies poison and encourages us to let go of the old stuff that's sticking around, that's getting in the way of flourishing. And when an organisation has been around for a while, when it's been through rough times, we can build up disappointments, little grievances, interpersonal tensions, and all of that stuff. And what I would do is invite everybody to think about what those might be. What might we be holding on to from our past relationship with the BXC that it's time to let go of, that it's time to lodge and test and settle. And that opens up the door, really, to have pride in our organisation, to use line 3, Palace of Heaven, and to feel the extraordinariness of our organisation, of our community as a profession. I remember when I graduated having sweated blood for nearly 4 years. I was on my knees, and I got my BXC registration certificate, and I've never been so proud. I was part of the organisation with the highest bar to entry of any regulatory organisation for acupuncture in the UK. The British Acupuncture Council is incredibly well regarded throughout Europe, in the States, and beyond. And I felt so proud to be able to wear that mark of quality. There's not a single patient that I have that doesn't know what that BXC logo means, what it means for the quality of their treatment, and what it means for me as a practitioner to be able to hold that standard, to actually have that logo attached to me. So I take tremendous pride in being a member, and I take pride in our organisation, and I let that pride show. And I think that that boosts the whole profession if we do that. Water was a funny one because the safety aspect and the kind of fear aspects are really pretty well taken care of. So I thought, what would I treat the BXC with water? And I came up with bladder 52, residence of the will, the outer back-shoe point of the kidney. And this is because it draws on the jing, and it gives us the courage and the will to keep going. So what is that jing of our profession? And for me, it's the massive evidence base and the fantastic history that we have behind us. I mean, we've got thousands of years of wisdom, of deep, deep wisdom to draw on. And we have a huge evidence base to draw on. And I'd really invite you to plunge into that, to enjoy the classics, to look at the evidence-based acupuncture website, to read the evidence fact sheets on the BXC website as well. And when you draw on that and you know that that's behind you, it gives you huge confidence in your practice. And when somebody starts poo-pooing acupuncture, calling it woo-woo, you find that you can really come back, and you can come back hard because you've got that behind you. And that gives you the will to keep going, to keep treating, and to have the courage to stand up to opposition. Next, the wood element. This is the point I like to be. No prizes for guessing my CF. Liver 3, Great Russian, the source point of the liver. And I remember once a patient stopped having treatment with me because it meant that she couldn't continue to donate blood. And I felt depressed and pissed off, frankly. I thought, oh, the BXC let us down. And then it occurred to me that I could think of the BXC as this group of people in an office, this handful of very dedicated people, trying to fight the entire war on their own in amongst everything else. Or I could see the BXC as much bigger than that, and see myself as a soldier in an army of thousands. We have 2,734 soldiers in this army. And if each of us takes up the weapon the BXC offers us, we can actually march and make a huge change. So what are those weapons that we have? Every now and again, we'll get an email from the BXC with a template letter to GPs or to an MP. All we need to do is download, sign, send, and we've marched. And when the video comes out with the evidence base for acupuncture along with the downloadable PDFs, we can book an appointment to see our MP, sit down in their office, make them watch the video, and hand them a piece of paper. If one person does that, it's a little bit of a difference. If 2,734 of us did that, can you imagine the tide we could unleash? So I'd like to join you, and ask you to join me as part of this army and to march together. And finally, there's fire and sharing the love. And I've chosen one of my all-time favorite points to have done, and that's half one, Summit Spring, where this fantastic joy bubbles up and comes through. And this is really about having fun. It's about connecting with our colleagues, loving what we do, loving each other, and enjoying this conference as it is in its wonderful way. So thank you very much for listening to the BXC through the lens of 5 elements, and I'll leave you with something to ponder as we enjoy this fantastic expression of love that is the conference. Thanks very much.